handcuffed in the front, and he was sideways and being punched in the face by Gregory Kwiatkowski.
Horne and about 10 other officers who arrived at the scene helped drag Mack out of the home, but once outside, Horne says Officer Kwiatkowski was out of control.
Gregory Kwiatkowski turned Neil Mack around and started choking him.
That story you've just seen a piece of is this. An officer sworn to uphold the law, 19 years of experience, seeing a colleague going too far, beating and choking a handcuffed suspect. The officer intervenes and is fired for obstruction and denied her pension. It is just one example of why it is so very difficult to do what needs to be done now more than ever. Digging out the poisonous few bad cops at every level of law enforcement and tossing them into the gutter where they belong. Let's talk about that. Welcome back to MidPoint, retired Los Angeles Police Department Sergeant, author of the book detailing her experiences in the LAPD, Black and Blue, the creation of a manifesto. Always a pleasure to welcome Cheryl Dorsey to the show. Sergeant, thank you so much for being here again.
Hi, Ed. Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. I promised you we would talk about this story, and indeed we are. This was in Buffalo, New York in 2006. The officer tried to stop another officer. She was punched. She was brought up on charges. She didn't get her pension. This, again, does it not speak to what you and I now have to focus on? The fact that much of America, black, white, blue, green, male, female, still believes there is that blue wall, there is that blue protection that goes on, and the bad cops are allowed to continue serving.
Absolutely, Ed. You know, it's the blue privilege, and so I understand that, you know, police agency heads want to protect that department. It's outrageous that they would deny this officer her pension after all. She did the right thing. Isn't that what you want someone to do? If you see an officer being abusive, if you see an officer going left of center, you would expect a cooler head to prevail, and that's what Carol did, and for her efforts, she was punished.
But why do we get to this point? I think maybe let's stop dealing with the incident itself and deal with the systemic issue that we have here. Because if we have an officer trying to stop another from beating an unarmed suspect, you would think right away that training would kick in and that something would go off in the one officer's head that would go, wait a minute, this is wrong, I have to stop this. Yet we're seeing too many instances where they don't stop on doing this. So why is this so deeply ingrained, and why does it continue to be something that we focus on with no answers?
Well, I think part of it is because there's no accountability and there's no real punishment. I mean, we understand that this officer was allowed to retire, which I call the gift that keeps on giving. He was able to retire and not really suffer any penalty for this. And officers who stand by, acquiesce, and watch these things go on do so in a large part because they don't want to be shunned. They don't want to have a jacket that you can't get rid of because now you've been labeled as someone who can't be trusted. You don't back your partner officer. And so it's cultural, it's systemic, and until the good behavior is rewarded and the bad behavior is dealt with aggressively, we're going to continue to have this problem.
Okay, now you just talked about something, though, that, I mean, this goes back, and for whatever reason, when you said that, I flash back to the Serpico case, which is now about 3,000 years of age. It's been in the movies. It's been talked about. Frank Serpico has been a guest on this show. He was a cop who didn't want to take a bribe, refused to take it. He was immediately then marked as a snitch and a rat, and he almost got killed one day while on a call. So we're still here, though. This was in the 70s. So now we're talking 50 years, around 50 years later, and it has not been changed. Forget the why for a minute. Where do we go? What does one smart person have to do, whether it's legislative, the public? How do we get to this incestuous disease?
Well, I think now that we're starting to hear an officer here and an officer there speaking out truthfully and rightly about the things that go on internally, I think as more officers feel empowered and don't feel a sense of ostracizing, isolation that occurs when you speak the truth, I think there's safety in numbers for sure. And so I thank God that Carol had the fortitude to do the right thing. And now we need to force that system to do the right thing by her and give this lady her pension. You know, this is just one of many examples around the world where officers, no matter the color, have truthfully spoken about abusive partners and have been punished.
Do we need to have civilian review boards, professionals on the outside that police departments have to answer to? It would seem to be that while that might not be the perfect solution, at least it's something, because right now the bad cops and the people protecting them don't have to answer to anybody.
civilian review boards are certainly helpful, but I mean, we have one here in Los Angeles, and if the civilian review board is not independent of that police department, of that police chief or commissioner, then you wind up with another board who just speaks, acts, and moves like that police chief. So it has to be truly independent, and I'm not really sure, Ed, how to make that happen.
Well, I think that's where we're at here, because we're finally getting down to this, and we promised to have this discussion. I don't mind having this discussion every day if we have to try and figure it out, to bring some sort of pressure on the cops. Again, I want to say, and you and I have said this many times, we are not talking about the preponderance of officers around the country. We are talking about the Gregory Kwiatkowskis, who is the officer in Buffalo who choked this suspect, who still is on his pension. We're talking about the others who are seen as bad cops. We get it. It's a very small amount. But we still have to start somewhere, Sergeant, because I will tell you right now, I don't trust cops anymore. And I'm a friend of the police officers, but there's a lot of them, the ones I call bullet heads, that I would not want to get involved with, because I know that whether I'm white, black, blue, or green, they're going to look at me and say, I'm writing a ticket, I'm taking you in, you're a pain in my neck, and I'm going to do something here. Where do we go? What's the step?
Well, you know, I believe if the officers are no longer allowed to hide behind a police department, and if they're held personally accountable, I think this bad behavior will stop yesterday, because they understand now that the city of New York or the city of Los Angeles is not going to pick up that tab when you behave badly and you violate someone's civil rights.
Then don't we have to maybe start with somebody in a lawmaking trend who is not afraid of the bad cops, who wants to take it down, who wants to punish these people, and you've got to start with legislation. I hate thinking that that's where we're at, that we've got to go to the law, but I can't think of any other way to get there.
I believe that there absolutely needs to be legislation, and whether it's the United States Department of Justice where it starts, our congressmen, I mean, people need to write letters, you need to make phone calls, you need to email your legislative officials and demand that they put something in place where officers, that very small minority, are held personally accountable when they misbehave and mistreat the public that they promised to protect and serve.
We have to do that. We have to find the bad ones, and we have got to chuck them on the street as quickly as possible. How to do it, we're going to continue to talk about it. I want to remind everybody once again that the book is called Black and Blue, The Creation of a Manifesto. Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey is here. She talks to us. We talk an awful lot of law enforcement here. I very much value her opinions. Sergeant, again, Happy New Year. Good to talk to you once again, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Ed, so much. Bye-bye.
Take care. Break, and we're back with the first Monday of a new year on Wall Street.